stand at this window with me. I said, do you have any idea what they're spraying in the air? And she said, no. And I told her. And the thing is that it really brings it home. When you have family members that die of things that have to do with metals in the brain, you're paying attention on a totally different level. So feel free to talk about the barium, the aluminum, and the strontium, and also, I guess, titanium as well.
Yes, I'll let Michael do that, but I just wanted to say one thing before he starts, is that since the film was released about a week ago, of course, our email inflow has been just tremendous. We get a lot of emails as it was, but now we're getting hundreds every day on this topic. And the reason I mentioned that is because you'd be surprised that what a common theme it is, what you just said. People said, I lost my mother, or I lost my father, or I lost my wife, or my husband to Alzheimer's, and we don't know where that aluminum came from. We know now that Alzheimer's is aggravated by aluminum collecting in the brain, and they all have the same story that where did they get it? They weren't drinking soda pops. They weren't eating out of aluminum pots and pans. They weren't using underarm deodorant that is loaded with aluminum and the other usual sources that you expect. And they all have said there's only one place they could have gotten it, and that's from the air, because, boy, have they been spraying around here for years.
I also wanted to tell you both that last year I began a climate change inquiry. I started with the first show that I did, and I really was a global warming proponent, meaning I had believed everything I heard. And I'm coming out and telling you this to tell you that 15 shows later, I am not on the side of global warming. There is no way that anybody can tell me now that there's a problem with the climate. There's no way anybody can tell me that they're spraying the air because of the climate. There is no way I accept any of that.
Well, that's their official story, of course. And we decided not to really take that on.
Yes, I understand.
Topic, because it is a huge topic in itself.
And it can be a derailing topic. It would get away from what this is. But I wanted to tell you that this is so interconnected. Last year, I found out that J.P. Morgan Chase, the head of the derivatives market, was part of the carbon exchange system along with GE. It's all connected. I'm sure that these spraying projects are deeper to something way more serious. But why don't you go ahead and share with the audience what the findings are?
I guess I can tell you the story. In our first trip was up to Northern California in the Redding area overlooking Mount Shasta. And a few years back, they started noticing that things were dying off on the property and farms were not getting the yield. So some of the scientists in the area started taking pH tests. And what they found was absolutely shocking, because the pH had increased between 10 to 12 times the normal alkalinity. And that's just a huge jump. So they decided to look a little bit further and try and figure out where this was coming from. And they started doing rain tests and also snow tests. And I'll reference one specific test. But again, they found massive amounts of aluminum, barium, and strontium. And within that combination, that will drive the soil to basic, exactly what's happening. About 7 years ago, Francis Mangels, who is a retired USDA biologist, took a snow sample on the side of Mount Shasta, far away from any ski slopes or anything else. It was definitely within the nature. And Mount Shasta, again, is removed from any industry, and there should be zero aluminum on that test. And 7 years ago, he got the test results back from a government-rated lab, and he found 7 parts per billion aluminum, also strontium and barium. He repeated that test 1 year ago, and the numbers increased substantially to 61,100 parts per billion.
What's the normal parts per billion, Michael?
Zero up there. Should be zero. Should be zero. So what they're finding now, aluminum and, of course, the barium and strontium were extremely high. These metals have increased at the same time where the aerosol spraying has been reported, in some cases, up to 50,000%. It's deeply concerning. And I left that area really saddened because many people bought acreage out there, including Dane Wigington, who's in the film.
and he had a dream of retiring on that property, and everything is beginning to die off on his property.
So that means even drinking the water is dangerous.
Well, it is, and people climb on Mount Shasta, and they use the snow to hydrate, and government action for drinking water is required at 1,000. This is 61,000 times that, and they're drinking that, and it's literally poison.
What do you suggest we do?
Well, let me jump on that one. Obviously, we have to inform the public. That's the first step, because most people are unaware, and there are a lot of people who are still in denial because they say, well, that can't be true. Otherwise, our authorities who would tell us, because they're so enamored with authority, they respect authority. They can't imagine that anybody with authority or with rank would deceive them. So there's a huge job for us out there just to make the public aware of the problem. But beyond that, then what do you do? Suppose 90% of the people were aware. It's still not going to change because the ones in political power are the ones who are either aware of this and helping it, or they're choosing not to oppose it for whatever political or financial reasons there may be. And this is being done with consent of government agencies. So the people who are giving that consent or not prohibiting it have to be replaced. That's the bottom line, and that's the only reason we are interested in trying to spread the word, is so that we can create a better political awareness so that the people who have allowed this condition to exist can be replaced by those who understand the problem and who are dedicated to protect us.
The thing that I heard years ago was that when Dennis Kucinich, in his space preservation bill, one of the line items in the space preservation bill had to do with the aerosol spraying and chemtrails, and I was told that he better take it out of the bill. And so I think some of the elected officials who are supposedly representing us, if their lives are threatened or if they're getting word that their family members could be threatened, then the Congress can be influenced through fear.
Oh, yeah, fear. Fear and promise of reward, too. It's the carrot and the stick together.
I mean, look what happened to Dennis Kucinich, and I don't want to get on the healthcare thing, but that guy was standing up and standing up and standing up until Obama took him on Air Force One and negotiated with him to go for forced healthcare. And so here was someone who stood right to the very end, you see? If that can happen to Dennis Kucinich, how do we deal with that? Most people are not going to be willing to stand up for fear of their families being eliminated.
Well, the time has come when people have to be willing to take that stance. So,
I agree with you.
We're fighting for our lives and for our freedom. I think our founding fathers faced that very issue when they stood up against King George. I mean, they knew that if they failed, and the chances were quite high that they might fail, that they would lose their lives, their families would be broken up and destroyed, they'd lose their lands, maybe their families would be killed too. But they were, they're men of character and women of character, and they stood for what was right.
And we're in a season now. These programs are so damaging, and we just scratched the surface today on the human health impacts. People are dying from this. Aluminum, barium, and strontium is very toxic. People are getting hurt. And my concern is if we don't do anything, those of us who know, there will not be much time left for many of us. And we're seeing such an increase in aluminum-related illness. Barium lowers our immune system. In L.A. County, in a 10-year period, we had over a 200% increase in Alzheimer's. And the physicians that we spoke to said it was very frightening, these metals, because they have an accumulative effect in the body.
I didn't know that. That was fascinating, by the way. I don't think the public knows that. Can you expand on that?
Oh, I can. They do have an accumulative effect in the body. So if we're breathing aluminum over a 10 to 15-year period, it's going to be very difficult to flush it out. Of course, I'm taking measures to chelate the metals out of my body, but most people are unaware of this.
Are you taking selenium?
I'm taking many different natural remedies. But what they said over a period of time when breathing these metals in, it will take